opposite effect of its intention, and to learn, it's important to have a discussion on the good and the bad. There have been highs and lows with the game in many aspects, and no one really could have predicted how things would have turned out because, well, how could they? For a company to turn back the clock 15 years and revert to the base state of their game is unprecedented, and both developers and players learned a lot through the whole process. The Burning Crusade is most likely the next destination, and specifically for this video, I wanted to focus on the subject of how recreating a game as accurately as possible results in an inaccurate recreation. Let's just get this out of the way first. No matter what, you can never truly recreate the game as it was back in the day. The times are different, and you are now different as a person. This is obvious, and everyone knows this, and many knew that even before launch. And it's not what this video is about. What this video is about is learning from our now 1 year of experience, a re-release of one of the most popular MMOs of all time by a AAA developer. Long before Classic's launch, there's a movement commonly known as No Changes. Aptly named, this movement demanded no changes. Raid difficulty? No changes. Class balance? No changes. The smell of my farts? No changes. Nonetheless, development continued. The game released, and it was close. Well, maybe. I don't know, it's subjective, I suppose. The game ended up releasing with the 6-phase schedule instead of the 12-patch cycle. To some, this is a huge deal, and to others, insignificant. It certainly resulted in a different experience than the original in a lot of ways, though. An ever-changing class balance, some endgame itemization on release, the next Ramus versions of the PvP sets probably being one of the more egregious examples. There have been notable differences, but the point of this video that I'm going to try to pitch to you is that all of them are dwarfed by the no changes design. Wait, what? The more accurate the re-release is, the less accurate it is? Well, let me explain. The biggest thing I think we can all agree with that's changed over the years is our knowledge. For many, World of Warcraft wasn't just their first MMO, it was their first game period, and the knowledge and skill discrepancy between then and now is extreme. And you know the saying, knowledge is power. It's a tool that we wield to do literally everything else in the game more efficiently, and a simple fact of the matter is Classic is a min-maxer's heaven. It's before a time where everything is overregulated and micromanaged. Have a cooldown that lets you global a group of 4 people every 30 minutes? Sure. Exploit this pathing so you can solo entire dungeons in one pull? Go right ahead. There's a godlike trinket for PvP that sometimes drops off of a level 40 rare that spawns once every 30 hours. Get farming casual. The difference between then and now is now we have the knowledge to game, exploit, and min-max every single aspect of the game, and this, more than any design choice, has resulted in a much different experience than the original launch. Let's just go down the list one by one. World buffs. Technically back then, you could stack world buff after world buff. You could set up summons, run a gauntlet, and rack up more steps on your character in one single night than you've done in real life for the past year. The Dharmal Tribute, Onyxia, Songflower, ZG, Blasted Lands, everything. Back then, technically you could coordinate 40 people to stack these, and then raid log for 6 days and run through these raids in 30 minutes, but it simply didn't happen. In 2005, approximately 0 people were sneaking into Orgrimmar to get mind controlled and get a 15% melee haste buff. But today, it's common. You're hearing it from the horse's mouth. I raided a lot back then. Most players didn't even know about world buff stacking, let alone being able to work out the logistics of coordinating 40 people to be on the same page. We simply didn't have the knowledge, nor means. I mean, our computers could barely run one account at 15 FPS, let alone 2 to have a Horde Priest ult to mind control ourselves, or Warlock ult spread across the globe. Even the elitist jerks, the best of the best, the #1 US guild led by Ian Hazakostas, didn't stack world buffs. And even going past the difficulty aspect, it's also different in the sense of raid logging. Raid logging hardly existed back then, if at all. People didn't say, nah, I can't log in because I have Songflower ticking. People didn't run a second account with a priest to reset head timers, and people didn't have summoning ults across the globe to facilitate world buffs. The effect on raiding is huge, but the effect on the community in a game that's focused around the community is just as huge. I think it's still complete overkill, and without them the raids will still be cleared through rather quickly, but the world buff meta is probably one of the biggest examples of how no changes has resulted in monumental changes with how the game is played. Let's talk about leeway. In original vanilla, Blizzard implemented the leeway system into the game. Our internet back then sucked. You remember when pictures would take 2 minutes to load, and you'd be waiting there in limbo, waiting to get to the good part, and then your mom gets on the phone and you had to start all over? It had a great effect on the game as well, so much so that where your character was on your screen wasn't actually there. Everyone lagged more, and it would be common to have a couple second discrepancy between your perceived position and your actual position. For PvE you could deal with it, but for PvP it was horrible because both participants had this lag, and meleeing each other was like an awkward square dance where you could be close enough to give your target a slap on the ass, yet still, you are out of range. To fix this, Blizzard implemented the leeway system. Appropriately named, this provided a bit of leeway to your range on certain actions while you or your target is moving, whether it be auto attacks, melee spells, or even AoE spells. In the name of no changes, this was brought back untouched by Blizzard, but there's a problem. Our connections don't suck anymore, and since leeway wasn't diminished to match that, it's had a huge effect in PvP in the game. You ever wonder why Frost Nova is a 10-yard range, and yet still you can get hit by it from mages that are in Africa? This is the result of 2004 based leeway coming to 2020 with no changes. This should be the maximum range of Nova in an ideal environment with no lag. However, here it is with 2004 leeway with 2020 connections. A huge difference, and it wasn't as extreme back then. Check out this melee range as displayed during the beta. You can't even consider this melee anymore. This is a special case with Tauren involved, and as you know they have that increased range. But still, this is something that'll surely be noticed even more in the Burning Crusade, where a single yard can make the difference between a win and a loss.
Why is she here? Why is she on your bed?
I feel like celebrating.
Get back on your broomstick and fly the hell out of here.
Wow. Surprise.
If I didn't know better, I'd say you were up to something.
Back in the day, in patch 1.4, Blizzard released the PvP honor system. It was pretty bare, and there weren't any battlegrounds, so to rank up, he simply world PvP'd. Remember when I said that the classic community is known for min-maxing everything? This includes humans. Phase 2 held Dire Maul, and shortly after, the honor system. Before this, the only reason to kill other players was for the fun of it, and seeing how many keyboards you can make people break. But then came Phase 2. In California, the legal age of consent is 18 years old. In Kansas, it's 16. And in World of Warcraft, it's 48, because it's then is when you give that sexy honor. The release of Phase 2 was the real apocalypse of the Mayan calendar. Burning Steppes, Searing Gorge, Hillsbrad, Plaguelands, f***ing Red Ridge. Every square inch of every zone was a battleground. It didn't matter if you were level 48 and you'd been killed 9 times. A roaming group of 35 players would paint the floor with your feces for a fraction of an honor point, and corpse camp you until you logged off in a wild scramble to obtain the mighty pixel. You think you can hide? Ugh, my spidey sense is tingling. There's a 60 paladin nearby and a rogue, and they're after my finely toned ass. Introducing the Spy add-on, otherwise known as wall hacks for World of Warcraft. This add-on essentially turned everyone into a guard in Metal Gear whenever you were foolish enough to come within 200 yards of them. You'd pop up on a list, and you'd see a horde of 20 players immediately change direction. If you were on a PvP server and you weren't level 60 by the time Phase 2 came out, you were not leveling up in the world. You just weren't. Imbalanced servers became extremely imbalanced servers as people migrated to either A, PvE servers, B, quit entirely, or C, PvP servers where they outnumbered the enemy faction. 60-40 servers quickly became 70-30, and then 80-20, and now we have some that are 98-2 due to the rampant and unchecked abuse of the server transfer feature.
Man, this is depressing to watch.
Remember, no changes though. This all came to an end when Blizzard finally released the Warsong Gulch and Alterac Valley battlegrounds, and players could once more leave their major cities. But for many servers, the damage had been done, and even today, nearly a year later, they still haven't recovered from the ridiculousness of the no changes Phase 2 launch. This isn't really a discussion on if this was good gameplay or not. Spoiler alert, it wasn't, but the point here is that, like many other aspects, the PvP system was released with no battlegrounds in the spirit of no changes, and resulted in a massively different and just plain unhealthy experience. I don't know, do you guys remember Ironforge becoming a horde city back then? Because I sure don't. That's a pretty big change if you ask me. And I could go on and on. We could get into batching designed for 2004 in a 2020 environment. We could talk about the economy, the level 1 pool parties that they only recently nerfed, multi-boxing, which they technically allowed back then, that was only recently nerfed. We could talk about dungeon XP with higher levels in the party being no changes, which has birthed the boosting meta. I think by now you get the point though. I'm not putting blame or faulting anyone here. I said it in the beginning, how could anyone really know how all of this would turn out? In fact, I considered myself mostly no changes at first. What's done is done, and there's no use crying over spilt milk. And that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is, now that we move forward with BC Classic here, is to not be so quick to default to the no changes mentality, because it doesn't necessarily make for a more accurate recreation. In fact, as you've seen, it can be the exact opposite. It's a never-ending battle for developers to combat players' skill and knowledge, and introduce unknowns and obstacles to slow them down. That itself is tough enough, but it's a problem that's exacerbated 100 times over in the context of these re-releases, because not only have we played the game before, but people have been playing them for the past decade through the advent of private servers, and the information is now out there. And what's more is you have to balance that with that aspect of recreating the game as accurately as possible. It's tough. So how do you keep dated and trivial content challenging to match the original experience, yet still keeping it as accurate as possible? Well, you can do things such as removing world buffs when zoning into raids, because that change more accurately simulates how it was back in the original run. I still think that the raids would be pretty easy, but the meta of stacking these insane buffs and then raid logging for 6 days would vanish, making it an experience closer to the original run in 04 to 07, which after all was the whole goal of the no changes movement to begin with. The key is to target things that are changed with this increased knowledge. If you can isolate it and knock it on that slippery slope, that's the best call in my opinion. People didn't bring world buffs into raids back then, so remove them upon zoning into raids for the re-release. People optimize honor farming, and in the absence of battlegrounds, will completely lock down the world, creating horrible server balance issues, so release battlegrounds with the honor system. Leeway is overcompensated for 2020 connections. Tone down the leeway because we're not on dial-up anymore. There are those already who fear that the Burning Crusades raids will fall under a similar fate as Classics raids, and that the content will be steamrolled incredibly quickly due to our combined increased knowledge and skill, assuming that it follows a similar design of that 2.4 patch, and loose phasing cycle with mostly no changes that we got with Classic.
Good fucking game, bitches!
We won't really know until it comes out and people get into these raids. Except that we do know. China, due to its strict regulations regarding video games, has seen many delays in releases. They only got the vanilla version of the game in June of 2005, 7 months after its North American release, and they got BC in September 2007, 8 months behind the rest of the world. And just 1.5 months later, the first Illidan kill was claimed. 1.5 months. And this is back in 2007. Nearly 13 years later, and with the advent of private servers and full raid guides, boss strategies, and so on, BC Classic will surely see the same fate as Vanilla Classic, and these raids will go from these epic challenges to parsing in leaderboards. I already know that people are going to tear my head off for this video, and to that end, I want to say that I think the best development strategy is to give players the choice. In regards to Classic, I think instead of the game launching with 40 plus servers of the phase schedule and mostly no changes design, it would have been better to launch with 20 of no changes and 20 with changes designed to make it more accurate to the original experience. So for example, there would be a Pagel and a Pagel Plus. The normal Pagel is as we know it now, and Pagel Plus would have changes to hot button issues such as world buffs, raid difficulty, leeway, and so on. This way the power is in the player's hands, and those who want no changes have a home, and those who want changes also have a home, and the servers function differently on a fundamental level. There wouldn't be an issue of the player base not being able to support both versions, because the amount of servers wouldn't be increased. It would still be 40, and I think players are pretty evenly split between the idea of changes and no changes at this point, now that we played the game for a year. There are those who enjoy the world buff meta, which is fine, and there are those who don't enjoy the world buff meta, which is also fine. I think it's reasonable, now that we've seen just how much no changes can change and trivialize the content, that players would want the option of raids that aren't cleared in under 2 hours on release, with added difficulty such as increased raid boss health or new mechanics. Ultimately, again, it'll never truly be 100% the same, but for BC, we can do better with the experience and knowledge that we've gained from Classic. To not use what we've learned would be a big waste. That's about it though. Spicy video, like I said. I can only say that I feel like I discussed it in a constructive way, and I tried my best to be fair to everyone, because if Classic has taught us anything, it's that everyone wants something different. I hope you enjoyed the video.
Experience extreme internet starting in 1999. Feel your devices come alive.
Hey everyone, and welcome to a ranged roundup for Shadowlands. And big surprise, just like with the Melee video, we're going to go through all the specs in the game. We're going to break down how they feel to play, the core changes for this expansion that you need to know, and of course, a look at the legendaries and our thoughts as well on them. So, a big, fun video for today. Also, good news, the second pin that you will get in this month's Patreon has arrived, and it is the Demon Hunter class pin. It's got a real sexy gold luster, and of course, we also have got the 2020 edition of the channel pin, as well as the art and the sticker. So, a lot of stuff. If you sign up in November and then you wait until, of course, Patreon does the charging thing on the 1st of December, then once that happens, we'll send them along to you. Bunch of cool loot, and also, it massively helps out what we're able to do. I mean, you guys are incredible. You've created 2 jobs, which is allowing us to do so much more for our Shadowlands coverage. It's all very awesome. So, thank you. Check the stuff out. And with that said, let's get into the ranged classes. BM Hunter is highly similar to BFA. Yes, you are still trying to maintain your barbed shot uptime for frenzying your pet, while, of course, lamenting your wild call RNG. You're still going to be getting 2 kill commands into your Bestial Wrath windows. That is all as it was. Bestial Wrath has had a change, though, but it's not one that I would have liked. Rather than be off the GCD, which would feel so much better than it does right now, given the pretty tight barbed shot timings and how that stuff can line up, no, it still is on the GCD, but Blizzard have made it so that whenever you use it, your pet does a mild amount of damage, so they're trying to make it being on the GCD feel okay because it's an attack, but basically, nah, it doesn't actually feel that good to use. I really think it should be off the GCD, just like how Ret Paladin got Avenging Wrath off the GCD. That is such a big room for improvement. It'll be so easy to do. Now, a few talents have also been modified for this one, with the new one being Bloodshed. Bloodshed's not great in my opinion, so it's a 1-minute cooldown that basically makes your pet do a bleed in the target, and that increases the amount of damage taken from your pet by 15%. So you're thinking, okay, I want to line that up with my Bestial Wraths. Sure, you want to do that, but the cooldowns often just don't line up, and that doesn't feel great. Plus, it is on the GCD, so when they do line up, you've got to use it in the GCD, and then Bestial Wrath on the GCD as well. So yes, doing that back-to-back sucks. Add in, say, the Kyrian Covenant ability, and hey, there you go. You've got another cooldown that's on the GCD. This is the one thing that I think really feels bad in this spec, genuinely bad. Now, the core of the spec does feel pretty damn good. You have got excellent movement, you've got a nice, smooth damage profile, you've got a whole bunch of utility. I mean, between Feign Death, Trank, Disengage, Turtle, you got so much. Now, look, it is really annoying that one thing the GCDs, so this may not all sound completely rosy, but what I will say is that, yeah, this spec is just one that actually fits really well when you're playing WoW content, and for me, I can roll this, I can get a nice weak aura, so I can get the most out of Barbed Shot, and then I can just really get down to what I truly love, and that is engaging with Blizzard's boss design in raids. So that's the core there. Let's talk about legendaries. Dire Command is just not that interactive. It's a bit boring. I mean, hey, you get another pet, but boring. There's Flamewalker's Cobra Sting. That gets you a nice bit of proc gameplay, which surely will increase the pace of things a little bit more, which I think could be quite fun. There's then Qapla', which is a bit wild. It makes it so that Barbed Shot reduces the cooldown of both Kill Command and Bestial Wrath. And, something that does risk being inefficient, but it can result in a nice bit of gameplay, where you can do a kill command and then a barbed shot, which will reduce your kill command CD by like 5 seconds. And so then you can just, go do another kill command. So that gives you that nice little sort of rhythm. Yeah, I mean, that might be a bit idealistic of me, though, because obviously you overall do want to maintain barbed at all costs because of frenzy stacks, so you might not always be able to do that. Then the final one is really boring. Barbed at all costs because of frenzy stacks, so you might not always be able to do that. Then the final one is really boring. Barbed at all costs because of frenzy stacks, so you might not always be able to do that. Then the final one is really boring. Barbed at all costs because of frenzy stacks, so you might not always be able to do that. Then the final one is really boring. Barbed at all costs because of frenzy stacks, so you might not always be able to do that. Then the final one is really boring. Barbed at all costs because of frenzy stacks, so you might not always be able to do that. Then the final one is really boring. Barbed at all costs because of frenzy stacks, so you might not always be able to do that. Then the final one is really boring. Barbed at all costs because of frenzy stacks, so you might not always be able to do that. Then the final one is really boring. Barbed at all costs because of frenzy stacks, so you might not always be able to do that. Then the final one is really boring. Barbed at all costs because of frenzy stacks, so you might not always be able to do that. Then the final one is really boring. Barbed at all costs because of frenzy stacks.
Fake it. Murray tosses very high. And probably the closest that Tre'Davious White has come to a football here this afternoon. Kyler Murray wasn't going to give him a chance.
No, you should not. And White was very physical with DeAndre Hopkins off the line of scrimmage. Actually knocked him down off of the line of scrimmage, and the Arizona Cardinals bench wanting a penalty, saying he was beyond 5 yards where the contact was.
2nd and 10.
See right there? Look at White. And now he takes him to the ground, and they want a penalty flag thrown. The official's like, no chance. That ball is up in the 10th row.
Get the play off. Murray hooks a pass. It was deflected. He was trying to hit DeAndre Hopkins.
And you know what's not happening, Ian? That clock's not moving much.
Nope. Back-to-back incompletions from Arizona. 4:23 left in the 4th. Murray is now 18 of 28.
So this is where you say, this is where, okay, you like being aggressive, and there's a deflection you talked about. You know, being aggressive is one thing, but if you are not converting and keeping it moving, that could come back to hurt you, giving Buffalo one more opportunity.
Looked like Ed Oliver got a piece. 3rd and 10 for the Cardinals. Murray steps up. Murray brought down at the 35. A.J. Klein was not going to let Murray pass. And the Bills are going to get the football back. It's a loss of 6 for Arizona.
And you know, A.J. Klein has not been greeted in Buffalo with a lot of favor until last week. Big week against Russell Wilson, 2 sacks. He made a big play here. Now, did he get his face mask? Well, I don't think that it's going to count because he never really possessed it and yanked it. He didn't get on the mask, but it got off.
Yep. Agreed. And they leave more room to work with this time, but a low punt. Roberts has got it at 22. Slam down there on special teams. It was Washington on the plate to bring down Roberts. Tonight on CBS begins with 60 Minutes and President Obama, his new memoir and where he believes the country is heading, followed by new episodes of NCIS Los Angeles, NCIS New Orleans, plus NCIS tonight.
So you know the third one, that means it's in D.C. because that's where it's all.
Oh, okay.
Right?
No, now
If it's in D.C., you don't have to say
I don't even have to say it.
because that's where the headquarters are.
First down, 3:35 to play, 4th quarter. Buffalo gets it back at its own 22. Allen, the throw to Stephon Diggs. Tried to get out of the grab of Murphy. Send it down to Evan Washburn.
You guys know John Brown on the field right now. It's a right ankle injury. His return is questionable, but he doesn't have his helmet and doesn't look like a player who's coming back in this game.
Well, yeah, but he really gutted through this one, didn't he? As you pointed out earlier with the knee injury, got hurt early. played through the entire game before the ankle injury after the attempted interception by Patrick Peterson.
The veteran Jonathan Joseph just signed by the Arizona Cardinals in his 15th year in the league, is now on the field.
He'll be at number 25 in red. And right now, if you're Arizona, you're telling everyone out there, tackle in the open field. Stephon Diggs can make you miss. Cole Beasley can make you miss and turn it into bigger yardage.
He was let go by Tennessee. Relationship goes back to the Cincinnati days with Vance Joseph. Allen breaks away, steps up, fires it downfield, incomplete.
How did he get away from Hassan Reddick there, Ian? He had him wrapped up, and I think Zach Moss came in and assisted cleaning him off of him. Watch Reddick 43 and watch Moss stay with it and battle him off of it along with Allen's own strength before he throws the ball away.
3rd down and 4 with under 3 minutes to play. 3-point lead for the Cardinals.
They're showing the aggressive amoeba defense again. Everyone on their feet. They've dropped out into coverage the last few times they've shown it.
From the gun, Allen throws it. Oh, what a grab! Cole Beasley right at the marker.
He climbs up, one hand, brings it in, and gets his feet down after the push by Byron Murphy.
5'8". Cole Beasley extends, and he gives Buffalo the first down.
Boy, did he stretch for that one. He went at least 6'3" for that one. Forget the 5'8".
Here's Allen. Plenty of time.